God, Becky.
Can Miss Becky please raise her hand, bro?
You better call Becky with the good hair.
Yo, what's good? It's your girl Becky the Poet. Welcome to my podcast, Unspoken Words. You guys, we are at episode. I'm not sure right now because it's the recording is out of order, but I'll title it in the title. So we have a special guest for today.
Hey there, how are you?
So go ahead and give him your piece and then tell him who you are.
All right, cool. Well, let's see what we can do. All right. So black is very dark, must look like not enough, must look like criminal, must look like fit the description, must look like you sure, must look like uncertainty. Black must look like broken, must look like a generational curse. Black must look like an apology for things that you have no reason to be sorry for. Black looks like days that there will be days that you oppose as a brick wall who does not know the art of crumbling. Days where the shade of your skin will be 1,000 needless apologies. Black must look like a joke. Black must look like a black man cuffed in the back of a squad car, shot and announced suicide. The world must think that black is stupid. They will call you midnight. They must have felt that a black body riddled with bullets must be a constellation. The cycles of black death goes as such. One, to be black, how red and blue can turn a soul. Hashtag before the bullet greets the body. Two, to be too black and alive and die for it. Three, to parade the black mother that broke herself for you in front of the media and watch her break again. Four, how they will investigate how black you were and how justified it is for you not to be here. Five, the officer will be paid handsomely for your bounty. Six, the vacation will start the day they lay the animal of your body to rest. And seven, they will come back to work ready and refreshed to defeat the enemy again and again. And yes, my name is Tro'juan Henderson, poet, just writer, educator. I do workshops facilitating around. Well, I facilitate workshops surrounding like domestic violence, about what it means to be an advocate for survivors of intimate partner violence, and just how we can just be better, and as well as talk about hip hop and writing.
So I've been I ran into you quite a bit of times. I first met you when you were on Dallas Poetry Slam team. Were you on the team, or you were just always hanging out with them?
Nah, I've never been on the team. I performed at Dallas.
Yeah, you probably performed at their.
Yeah, that was it.
And then I've also you know Hogan.
Yeah.
That's and so we have like a mutual friend. And then I've just seen you a lot now. You know, when you see somebody, you see them again. So that's pretty dope. It's probably fate that we're here. Also, I just ran into one of your YouTubes, not your YouTubes, one of your TED Talks. Yes. So I think when I was in college, I was like, I always want to be on TED. So I always admire people who get on TED. But then I'm like, man, public speaking is not my thing. So if I get on TED, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Word.
But so you've done 2 TED Talks?
Yeah, 2. And
I ran to the one about hip hop,
right?
That was a really good one because you actually talked about kids in hip hop.
Yeah.
I think I actually mentioned you in a previous episode how sometimes I was talking about Asian culture, how we don't express our feelings, or I don't remember who I was talking about with, but you said a line about how you teach kids how to write poetry, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of so what happened in this instant?
What you mean, like how did I get the TED Talk, or what happens in the class?
What happened in that moment where you're?
Oh, in the story. Okay,
right.
Yeah. So it was pretty much like I was contracted to do a workshop in the school. I forget. I think it might have been Madrano Middle School. I can't remember. But usually what happens is we'll do like different workshops, and you always just have like kids who might say something like, "Oh man, I don't write poems," or "I don't know how to do all that," or et cetera, et cetera. And then it's funny because once you actually tell them to start doing something, they don't even realize that they're actually writing a poem. It's kind of like once you start doing all the abstract stuff, that's when it started getting too complex. So, it was just a kid in there who was just saying, I don't write poems, I don't do anything, but he said, I do rap and I do have a favorite artist, and one of his favorite artists was Tupac. And he mentioned a line that was saying, oh, no love for my daddy because the coward didn't no love for my daddy because the cowboy didn't care.
Right.
He passed away, and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger.
What song is that?
Dear Mama.
Oh, good gosh.
It's like second verse of Dear Mama.
Okay.
And so he did that, and the whole class is like, okay, cool. And so I was just asking him, I'm like, yo, why does that line relate to you? And he was telling me about how his mom kind of, I don't know if the word is resent, but basically she resents him for his dad leaving. Like everything was good until his dad left, and so he has a thing to where it's like, if he was not born, no, he said if his dad had not left, maybe his mom would actually love him more. And so and I was just telling him like, yo, what you just said in that moment, that's poetry, that's just self-expression. It doesn't have to be this complex thing, because truth be told, I don't understand all that anyway. So yeah.
So honestly, you guys have to watch the whole TED Talk. It's not even that long.
It's only 12 minutes.
It's a good car ride.
With society,
But it was a really interesting topic because one thing is, you being on TED Talk is a big deal, right? as like poets, speakers or anybody, they one of the goals is probably to get on TED Talks, right? And also to help the community somehow.
Yeah.
So are you a teacher?
I'm a teaching artist, so I pretty much literally get contracted and work in schools like year round, just doing workshops over poetry and creative writing, and hip hop.
So what is it that you're a poet, people out here, they want to make money somehow with poetry, right? So they want to, maybe one thing is like performances. Yeah. And maybe another thing is like being a motivational speaker, Yeah. Or maybe another thing is like hosting workshops, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So why did you choose, or how did this come about of teaching?
You know what? That's actually funny because I don't have a degree. So what's going on?
It's fine.
Okay, cool. So I don't have a degree, so teaching was never in my just idea of life at anything. Pretty much how that worked was I was always doing open mics. I think I started in like 2009, maybe 2010, but I think like 2009. I was always doing open mics, and I have like mentors, Will Ritchie and Darius Frazier and Alejandro Perez. And so they literally saw me doing like so many open mics and just moving around. And we was taking like state trips everywhere. So literally I would leave Dallas and go to like Baton Rouge or Shreveport to go to an open mic and then drive back to Dallas because I had to be back at work at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So, after I was doing that, I think somebody at this nonprofit called Big Thought happened to see me, and it was just like, oh, we have these summer.
I just talked to Rage about that.
Yeah. And so he said, yo, we got these summer programs and these year-long programs, and so they were just putting us in different schools, and that's literally how it came to be. And after that, I just started seeing like, okay, if they can put me in a school, let me start facilitating my own workshops and let me start presenting them to like colleges or feature venues or whatnot. And so it just kind of came. So I definitely wouldn't have known that by myself. Like,
so when you create these workshops, I know there's no how in school you have like specific lesson plans.
Yeah. How
do you create lessons to teach people at workshops when sometimes when poetry honestly started off as self-expression?
Man, yo, that's really like a complex, simple answer. I don't know. I really just be sitting there and I listen to music a lot. I don't watch many poems on YouTube because I'm a reader. Mm-hmm. So
great, you guys are doing construction.
And so I don't know. I just start playing with the sounds. Like I'll hear certain lyrics and I just think literally like, oh, yo, this would be a good topic to address. And we'll just start like forming things. And then also sometimes workshops come at the cost of like just conversations with homies. So really it's literally on a whim. So I just think of like what's the overall purpose, and that's about it.
I think we have to take this inside. I think I'm taking this inside. All right, y'all. We're back. Construction worker was disrespectful. I don't even know how to edit that if I do edit it. But I don't remember what the last thing was left off. But we're just gonna hop on to a new question. Freaking mic is not working. I mean, complications right now, you guys. But so you do big thoughts for kids, right? And honestly, when Rage first told me about that, I was like, big thoughts. Like I'm thinking the actual like something not for the kids.
Yeah.
But so you say you go to a lot of open mics and stuff, but you don't really. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes you perform, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
So what is that all about? Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing too.
No,
I just want to know your perspective.
Nah, what that is about is because I've been doing this since like 2009. So
right.
I used to be out like almost 4 or 5 nights a week for like years straight. Like literally every like Monday through Saturday almost it was a spot. In addition to us running the older spot called Just a Buck. So I don't know. Nowadays, it just feels good to, and also once people start like knowing that you perform, like you start going places, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you here? Oh yeah, come on up. Yeah, come on up." And which don't get it twisted, that's always like a great thing,
right?
You know, because they could not want you at all.
True.
But however, sometimes it just really feels good to like go and be a part of the audience. Like I had got jealous of people who was able to just be entertained. I got jealous. I was envious of them. I was like, man, what's that like? Like to just. And I had to like remove myself because sometimes what happened is you will perform so much that even when you go in places, you're so focused on when they're gonna call you up, how you gonna do, what you're gonna do, that you're not even like sitting and processing the show. So like literally nowadays, I like to just go and literally just say, hey, no, I'm just gonna pay my money. I want to support everybody else. I want to be like, I don't know if the word is objective, but I want to just sit in the crowd and just be a supporter. That's it.
No, I respect that. I know I only hosted like 4 events or whatever, and out of those events that I hosted, I've never once enjoyed it. Like I enjoy like watching some of the performances, of course, but like in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh crap, who's coming in? Did they pay for the ticket? Oh wait, like it's just it's crazy.
But it's also another thing too about making sure you got a good team. But also
I'm a one man person.
Yeah, see,
okay,
hey,
I lied. Akira helped me a lot.
I was say, yo, you know what? I used to think that until it it need a team. Like even if it's just a small crew of people that are good at what they do. But also another thing is like when I'm sitting there, I have to like get out of writing mode because what happened is like. Yeah, you might be sitting there, but you'll be up there looking like, oh my gosh, the host ain't doing this, or the door ain't doing this, or the venue is like this, and it's like, nah, just sit and be a fan.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, take yourself out of everything. Like, when I'm sitting there, I'm not critiquing nobody. I'm not saying, oh, they need to perform like this, they need to slam like this, they need to write. Like, I'm literally sitting here and accepting it. Like, okay, this is his style, this is her style.
Right.
Okay, this is this. And I actually like going to things outside of slam.
Just like art festivals and just.
Oh no, I don't like festivals.
Oh, okay.
No, I just don't want us to be around swarms of people. But I like going to things because sometimes what happens with slam is, I kind of look at it like, a comparison I can think of is like mainstream radio or mainstream hip hop and like independent.
Right.
Sometimes if you're not mindful of the community, slam becomes this bar and it becomes a thing to where, say, new writers come in and they feel like, oh my gosh, if I'm not doing it like this, then I'm not worthy of being on stage. So a lot of times, like, I actually like going outside of slams and saying, oh, well, let me go to the little cat over here who's hosting the coffee shop thing, who might not think that his show is worth that much because it's not National Poetry Slam. It's like, they both have their meanings. And and honestly, those places, like, it's fun because you can actually just work stuff out. You can like test stuff, like some things that I wouldn't slam with. I can just go over here and say, hey, let me try this. I want to just try this and see how it goes across. But I haven't slammed in like 5 years anyway, so yeah. I mean,
I understand it completely. Just being a fan, just supporting, it got to the point where sometimes I felt like sometimes the stuff that I was writing wasn't like like open mic presentable. Yeah. And so just trying to just relax and just like just enjoy the show while you have time, because there will be times when you do get booked left or right, and I feel like that happens like when you least expect it.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need you just need to be inspired. Like sometimes, like I literally will go some places and I'll just sit up there, and the guys over there looking at me like, "Oh man, I saw you at this school," and I'm thinking like, "Oh, well, thank you," but I'm like, man, I'm inspired by how simplistic you are. Like I actually miss when this wasn't. When I didn't take it as such a job at sometimes. So I like some of them cats. I like the fact that they can say, "Oh, I'm writing every day." I'm like, man, I rarely ever write. I want to do that. Like I want to be simple like that. I want to not overthink stuff, and so
yeah.
So like I actually like doing that.
You know, it's funny that you people who make this a career or like getting money off of this, they look at people who are just starting off and they're like, man, I wish I was like doing it just like them. It's funny because I look at people who like you and Rage and other people. Like I'm like, man, I wish I could do it. Like, I could read my poem like y'all, perform like you guys. And I'm like, and every time I watch you guys like on Bum Poetry or just like some on Instagram videos and stuff, I'm like, oh gosh, that's a really good performance. Yeah. But it's one of those things like I have to learn how to be my own artist. Yeah, and it's funny because I'm still looking at other people up top, and one's like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do it like him. But I don't know. It's a thing about like finding your own thing. Like I used to, when I first started, I remember like being the guy that, no, actually, the guys that I saw performing first were at Dallas Poetry Slam. Right. The guy that made me really want to do it is a guy named Talam Acey from Newark, New Jersey. And I remember like, you don't know who you are, so you kind of like trying to find your thing. So it's like Talam may have did a certain body language, but Rudy Francisco might have held his hands in his pocket, but this person might have done this, and you kind of pulling from everybody trying to find your own things. Right. Until you realize like those people like you for a certain reason. You might listen to Rage. You like Rage because of this. Right. You don't want Rage to sound like Robert Frost. Right. Or Langston, whoever, you know, like you don't want Rage to sound like that because Rage's thing is unique to him, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, you should start to find your own thing. So it's hard at first, but especially when you see that this is working. So, yeah. So you said you've been doing this for 9 years. So what are you doing now? What you mean? Like, you still, are you doing, you know, I know you have a couple of performances for Folk Culture Studios, et cetera, but, like, what are you doing besides all that? That's pretty much it. Like, I mean, obviously I drive, Lyft, and Uber, but I just talked to Pretty Hurt, so she does Lyft. She does that too, and she said she does it full time, and I'm thinking to myself like, goodness gracious. Hey, I mean, I hate driving around in Dallas overall, so I don't know how y'all do it. I got a promo code if you need it. It'll get you $1,050. So yeah, for real. But now I drive Uber and Lyft because that allows me the flexibility. But also, I'm still looking for other opportunities, like to work in school systems more permanently. But no, I mean, even writing, I think I have been reading a lot more. I've been reading a lot more. Writing. So you said you're not really like a listener; you're a reader. How's that helped you like retain all this information you have? Oh, I don't watch. I hardly ever watch poetry on YouTube or anything. Like if I go to an open mic, I can watch the poets, but depending on who it is, like, man, I want to read your work because some things I might not catch in your 1, 2, 3 minutes. I might not catch it, and then when you get the crowd applause and all those things, my thing is like, oh man, I want to read what this looks like on paper. So yeah, I don't necessarily have to hear. Not being funny, I don't have to hear you speak. Like I just want to. I just like to read. I like visual things that I can come back to, highlight, and break down. So yeah, that's just my thing. Yeah. Do you have books for yourself, like books that you written or anything? That I read? Written. Oh no, I don't have any books. I'm working on something right now though. Is that a secret? No, it's not a secret. It's actually it's funny because the first TED Talk I did was about masculinity. I'm not gonna put the title out because I really think like I hardly ever think anything that I do is like, but this title I do believe it's really that, so I won't put that out. But however, I know no, but trying it's to like get the tea for y'all. Yo, I would any other time, but this one I'm like no. I literally Googled. I'm like, yo, is this a title? Is this YouTube? Is this anything? I found it nowhere on the internet. I said, yo, I'm holding this until I can like put it out there. But no, it's pretty much focusing on like emotional literacy, but also like challenging the idea of
what is it? Challenging the idea of like masculinity. It's a book that I'm reading currently called Cry Like a Man, and it was just talking about like taking away from like that emotional incarceration that they would call it. So it's a project and poems that I'm working on that centers around that. Of course, from a cultural standpoint, but at the same time, I still want to actually make it like digestible for like any of it, because it's not a black thing. And like growing up, I thought those things were black things until I started like traveling and reading poems. And I'm like, oh, y'all got this in the Asian culture. Oh, y'all got this in this culture. Oh, y'all got like, oh, men don't do, like. And I was like, oh, so this is a well-rounded thing. Like, okay, cool. And it was like, okay, cool. So I don't feel crazy anymore. So yeah.
So I had a couple questions for you before you were scheduling this interview or whatever podcast episode. So why is your creativity or inspiration hip hop? Out of like every other like thing, like there's a but why hip hop?
Well, no, it's more than hip hop. It's just that's the thing that's like always gonna be like the foundation though, and it's more so because hip hop was like the first. I don't know. I think like hip hop was like the first thing that I heard like as of storytellers. So, for example, I'm like kind of gonna like bounce around from like a Tupac to like a J. Cole. I have this like crazy like it's a little comparison. So my biological mother was incarcerated and also struggled with drug addiction, and she actually like carried me in her womb while she was like addicted as well as in prison. She found out like 4 months in that she was pregnant, 4 months while incarcerated. So when I was with my dad, I remember hearing the Tupac lyric when he was saying like, even as a crack fiend, mama, you always were a black queen. So at 8 years old or 9 years old, I'm kind of listening to that like, my mom has a drug addiction, but who is this guy to say, to kind of affirm his mother in the same sentence where he's talking about her addiction. So that kind of like taught me a little bit about affirmation, love in the midst of some kind of brokenness or etc. So like fast forward, J. Cole drops a album, fast forward obviously like 20 years later, but J. Cole drops album KOD. Mm-hmm. He has a song on there called Once an Addict, and it's about his mother who was battling with addiction of alcohol though. Mm-hmm. So the last lines of that song is something has a hold on me, I can't let go, out of fear I won't be free. And I remember like sitting one day thinking like, yo, why would you not want to let go of something out of fear it won't be free? And it kind of hit me that when he said something has a hold on me, I can't let go, out of fear I won't be free. Something having a hold on you in my situation would be my mother's addiction, and this is the only memory I know of her being absent in my life. And when he says I can't let go out of fear that I won't be free, freedom looks to me like possibly forgiveness and opening up myself for another chance to be possibly hurt, but however grow and like foster a relationship. So it's like the fear of stepping out of the known. Like at least when she's addicted, when she's absent, this is comfortable. I know what's happening. If I step out and say I forgive her, I want to try to build a new relationship, that kind of leaves me open to be hurt again. So freedom in my mind represents a second chance and transparency. So like when I hear like people in hip hop talk about those things, it's like, yo, my dad never talked to me about these things. My sisters, my teachers, or anything. Like hip hop was the first thing that I noticed that was like talking about things in the open. Like I remember hearing Biggie talk about suicidal thoughts, and I'm like, yo, this guy's like 24 years old. Like what? Like, so I don't know. I think it was just like those things. Like hip hop rappers were the people that were being like very expressive, and so I was like, hey, I want to do that. Never rap, but
have you heard of Amari Hardwick's poetry podcast?
I didn't know he had a podcast, but I know who he is.
He's a guy from Power, I think. Is he? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I don't watch Power.
Yeah,
but he just created this though. It's a poetry podcast. So he's bringing rappers onto the show, and he's talking about having them like write poetry, which is kind of confusing because, you know, when I hear rap, I do think rap as poetry.
Yeah.
You know, but also I just haven't listened to it yet, but he had like a snippet of how he was just talking about how rappers, you know, talk about money and all this stuff, and that's not like poetic. It's just like pretty much screaming or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's a balance. I think it depends on like how you do it. Because I ain't gonna lie, I like some of that ignorant stuff. Like I like some, like I tell people I love Cardi B. I love Cardi. Like I love her, but I also love Black Thought, Nas, Wale, Andre 3000. But I also love Jeezy and 2 Chainz. You know,
right?
But also I separate those things. Like I'm not gonna say it's disposable, but this right here, I realize this is just for entertainment versus I'm gonna be talking about this Black Thought thing 10 years from now. So I don't know, I think it's just like that thing that they were just very transparent and honest and raw and just all those things. So yeah,
I think also it's just like a balance, you know, like kind of like with everything. Like, so if you have a lot of people who are very poetic, you know, when somebody does create something new, it's different. They're like the new wow. So I think it's nice to have a balance of like raw music, raw poetry, same thing, and like comedic poetry, and then ratchet music, I guess.
Yeah, you actually need that balance, like, or as they were calling in poetry, having deep pockets.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like if you hear Rage, you might hear him do something like this poem about stretch marks, but you can also hear him do a poem about Tyler Perry and Waka Flocka, and then you know, you want to be able to go anywhere and say, hey, I can perform in a church, I can perform at this open mic, I can perform at this cafe, I can perform at this wedding.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, you just want to be able to have that. And by the way, hip hop has that too, because for example of that might be a Tribe Called Quest, or it could be a Tupac, because Tupac has.
I would say Lecrae could be. You know, Lecrae is the type of artist that you could be playing rap. Yeah, play music in church, like rap music in church.
Yeah, but you know, like I bring like Tupac up or Kendrick Lamar because like Tupac will have Dear Mama.
Okay.
So you might say, oh, a Mother's Day sermon or whatever. Yeah. But then he also got California Love. You might be at the pool party with your people on the weekend.
Everybody does get hyped when that song comes on.
You got Memorial Day. I don't know what Memorial Day is about. But like all those things, like you got Juneteenth, whatever. Like you got California Love, but you also got Dear Mama. Then you got Hail Mary, but you also got Brenda's Got a Baby.
So like very like artists who are very versatile. Yeah.
But no, Lecrae is a good one. He got a song called "Get Back Right" off Let the Trap Say Amen album, and that song is hard.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah, it's produced by Zaytoven, the whole album. But then Lecrae also has stuff from Church Clothes that is more introspective. Which
and some of his stuff, like I think he is somewhat raw.
Yeah,
because I mean I don't listen to a lot of hip hop, let alone like decipher like you do. Yeah. But that it's pretty cool that you can do that, because you know sometimes we listen to music and we just listen to it, and we don't understand it until Twitter points something out and like, oh wow.
I'm the person who actually nowadays I try not to do this though, because around too much, because I realize people sometimes they just want to listen to music. I'm the person who be like,
well, you know they really talking about this.
Yeah, but I do get some of it's entertainment. Like they just saying stuff. Like when Rick Ross said slip Molly on a little champagne, she didn't even know it. I was like, whoa.
That's not cool.
That's definitely date rape.
I just saw I guess like an article of a YouTuber who had a party and supposedly could have probably put date rape drugs into these drinks, and I was like, dang, that's not cool. Yeah, but yeah, like if you listen to the lyrics, sometimes it's not the greatest. Like I guess the whole we don't speak of his name right now, and don't give him no clout, but like you know the incident recently happened. Girls,
I don't know who it is, but I get you.
Young girls in the studio.
Oh yeah.
So his songs were good until like people started deciphering it. And then and this all came out, and it was just like, well, he's canceled.
Yeah, so, hey, but you know what? You got to blame that on the consumers a little bit, because the thing is, like, they started putting the music out.
True.
And it's supply and demand. It's kind of like these people will literally come from, like, 0 followers, 0 SoundCloud, 0 YouTube. They put it out. The consumer listens to it. They get 20 million views on YouTube or SoundCloud.
And they become popular.
Listens. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get the corporation that come and say, put this money in them. So it's kind of like, if this is the content that got me up here, why would I stop?
Yeah.
If that's who you are, you know. So I actually sometimes challenge the listeners to like be a bit more, just a bit more firm and say, nah, I ain't listening to that. I can't do with that, because that's the listeners are the suppliers or the demand. They create the demand.
Man, you are really knowledgeable about this, and I think you should do, like, in the future, do a workshop about poetry and hip hop.
Yo, it's real. Like, I'm not sure. Are you familiar with synesthesia?
No.
So pretty much synesthesia is like when one sense triggers another sense. Like for example, have you ever smelled a certain food and thought about your upbringing?
Oh yeah.
So you might smell a certain meal, and they might take you back to like 6 years old and think about, oh, my grandmother like Saturday morning cleaning or something like that. The same thing happened with music. So sometimes if you ever seen like Kanye West produce a beat, like I think sometimes I can see the sound, and like sometimes even if you listen to certain music, you can tell the time when the music was made. Like if you go listen to an old Motown record, I can see, oh, these kind of outfits will be worn to this soundtrack of someone's life, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so,
but
I say those things.
Visual artist.
No, but I say those things because, like, what happened is, like, when you listen to the music, it literally, like, conjures up these emotions and these thoughts and these things. So, like, and I don't think it's responsible for you going to act out something, but I definitely think it puts some things in there. Like, have you ever been in a thing where, like, I battled with like different mental health, like suicide and different things like that in the past, thoughts, or even if it was a breakup. You ever like been going through a breakup, or whomever know your friends going through a breakup, and you automatically go toward the sad music?
Yeah,
because that kind of stuff feeds what
or
you're feeling
Pandora,
in the moment. Yeah,
or Pandora knows how you feel, which is so weird.
Yeah, and you like that's why I say the music is influential.
I mean, I remember when just like my emotions, how I were feeling, Pandora would just automatically just play whatever song, and I'm like, this is weird, but I can relate.
Yeah, and it like feeds it. Like even when you think of certain music, like you will like certain music makes you feel certain things. Like you go to a club and they play some heavily
music.
Angry, aggressive music.
Oh, what's that?
Like,
what's that one song that people always get lit to?
I'm not in the clubs. I don't even know. I
don't
don't even
know.
listen to the radio.
I don't know, but this is one song, and whenever the DJ plays it, everybody just gets really lit. Kind of like I just saw a video that Brandon Moore posted of Instagram. I think they're friends, but she was like listening to City Girls, and she was really getting and then.
But you're not acting the same way to I don't know, a Rhapsody song or a Whitney Houston song, like because all of those songs like fuel different.
Yeah, because I know people when they listen to Whitney Houston or when her incident happened, people are really like in tune and touch and like very emotional about it. Yeah. So music, I would say music has a big role. I would say also music, when you listen to music and like having the instrumentals in the background when you're doing a poem. It like increases the emotion more.
I ain't gonna lie, I can't do that. I tell them, I'm like, hey, don't. I tell them, do not throw no music behind me.
Does it make you more emotional, or does it throw you off?
No, it throws me off. Like that's it. If I just have to do it, I'll do it. But no, that's a real thing. So that's how it kind of like ties into poetry for me. So it's not necessarily utilizing it like me trying to rap. It's just more so like taking those things, and it kind of inspires me more because like when I start hearing certain things, one advantage that music has over poetry sometimes is when you're doing music, you can suck, but if your beat is hard and your hook is catchy, you are successful. When you are doing poems, the only instrument you have is your voice
and your words.
So if you don't get these people in, it could be like
downhill from there.
Yeah, so that's where another thing. So it's like, man, how do I channel this right here into this to just merely get those things? So yeah.
So if you could give a poet who is inspired by music or hip hop, what would you tell them? How would you tell them to practice or advice to create their poems?
I don't really tell people how to write poems because I don't know how. What I tell people is I would say, I think Jasmine Mans had a quote. It says like the poem doesn't begin until you start being honest. So I would say be honest. I would say revise and edit. Editing is a big thing. And it depends on the piece, of course. That's all subjective to the piece. But like I remember I wrote an angry poem about my mom in 2009. I wrote about my mom again in 2018. Those poems are world apart. Like, the piece that I have for her now is more of like curiosity and more forgiving. The old piece I had was angry. And so it's like, no, who I am, how I felt about my mom at 20 years old looks different than how I feel about her at 30 years old, knowing more about her. So I would say, like, and also give the poem time to breathe. Like, allow gestation periods. Like, just don't force it. Like, sometimes you got to live a little and the poem will come out. Sometimes it could take a day, a month, a year. Like,
I totally agree on that. I have poems that my first draft was like, but then, like, some reason I'll just come back to it, and then it's always, like, a lot better.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll be coming back to it a while later, and then sometimes you just jotting a few lines, you're like, oh, this is it, so let me write that down.
I never want to feel forced to write a poem, because I feel like when I'm forced, and when I force it, it doesn't come out the way I want it to, or it doesn't come out good, it doesn't come out authentic. Right. It comes out forced.
Yeah, you're trying to do it, so, but I think there has to be a fine line between forced and still, like, being disciplined and working, you know. But no, I get exactly what you're saying. And sometimes it's like, maybe you don't need to write a new poem. Sometimes maybe you need to go revisit old poems.
Mm-hmm. I always do that too. I always, like, edit my old poems, and it always sounds different sometimes.
Yeah. So,
so go ahead and tell them where they can find you on social media.
It's social media, Twitter and Instagram is Trojuan at TROJUAN _ Facebook is Trojuan, TRO'_JUAN, last name Henderson. Yeah.
All right, y'all. And we're out.